Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Before there was breath, there was silence. Not the kind of silence you find in a quiet room, but the deep hush that filled the universe long before lungs ever opened. It was a silence born in the aftermath of stars, when light had burned itself out and left behind only ash, stardust, drifting cold and alone. That dust was not lifeless, though. It held the blueprints of everything that would someday breathe. Every atom in your lungs once belonged to something ancient, perhaps a supernova that lit the sky billions of years ago. Perhaps a red giant that swelled and sighed its last breath across galaxies. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, these are the elements that pass from stars into space, then from space into life. And they are the very same elements that now swirl quietly through your chest each time you inhale. You do not breathe air, you breathe memory. Long before the first creatures walked, swam, or crawled, Earth's skies were not meant for lungs. They were thick with gases too harsh, too strange, too unfriendly for the kind of breath we know now, but Earth was learning. The planet was shaping itself, oceans forming, volcanoes exhaling, and in time, tiny forms of life began to appear. Not animals, not even plants, but simple single-celled beings that floated through shallow seas. They didn't breathe like we do. They drank light, and in return they changed the world. These were cyanobacteria, small blue-green whispers of life that invented something astonishing: photosynthesis. With it, they turned sunlight into food and exhaled a strange new gas: oxygen. At first, it poisoned everything. Oxygen was not welcome, but the world adapted, and slowly, that oxygen began to shape new paths, new bodies, new ways of being alive. One of those paths led to lungs. The earliest lungs did not belong to humans. They belonged to fish. Not the ones that swim in oceans now, but ancient fish that lived in shallow, oxygen-poor waters. They needed more than gills to survive. So slowly, over generations, they began to form small sacs inside their bodies, pouches that could hold air. These were the first whispers of lungs. Not perfect, not powerful, but enough to sip at the sky. Imagine a creature crawling from the mud, its sides rising and falling with breath for the very first time. It would have felt like a miracle, air rushing in, life deepening with each inhale. And yet it was not just life taking its first breath, it was stardust reawakening. Your lungs carry that story, each one shaped like a tree turned upside down, branches spreading, splitting, narrowing into bronchi, then bronchioles, then alveoli. These tiny sacs, so small they can only be seen with a microscope, are the place where breath becomes blood, where the air outside you becomes part of who you are. Every minute you breathe in 15 times, and each time a quiet exchange happens. Oxygen enters, carbon dioxide leaves, a cycle as old as the stars. Even now, when you sit quietly and draw breath, you're not doing something ordinary. You're participating in an ancient ritual, older than words, older than thought. It is a continuation of the story that began with exploding stars and ended in the gentle rhythm of your chest rising and falling. So much of the world is shaped by breath. Trees open their leaves like lungs to the sky. Whales rise through deep blue silence to gasp at the surface. Birds beat the air with wings powered by lungs as light as feathers. Even the soil beneath your feet breathes, exhaling warmth in the morning, sighing coolness by night. Breath is not just a function, it is a thread that ties the living world together. And you too are part of that thread. You are a knot of stardust that learned to breathe. Close your eyes now and feel the air move through you. In, out, again. You are not separate from the stars. You are their descendant. You carry their light, their dust, their breath. And every time you inhale, you remember what it is to be made of sky. Let's drift deeper now, past the soft edges of your breath and into the intricate world within. You may not feel it, but inside you there is a forest of airways, branching like rivers etched in reverse. These passages do not simply carry air. They shape it, warm it, moisten it, prepare it, and at the end of every branch is a leaf, not green, but pale and round, cradled in capillaries. These are your alveoli, and you have over 300 million of them. Together, they form a surface as wide as half a tennis court, all folded neatly within your chest. Each alveolus is like a tiny room where a secret meeting happens. Here, oxygen steps from air into blood, a quiet transfer so gentle it seems impossible that it sustains life. And yet it does. With every inhale, your blood becomes bright. With every exhale, it carries away the waste of living, carbon dioxide, born from the work your cells have done. This trade has happened without fail since the moment you were born. But where does the oxygen go once it enters your blood? The journey continues, travelling through vessels like ancient roads, moving ever inward. It reaches your cells, tiny engines powered by breath, and within them, another transformation begins. Oxygen enters the mitochondria, where it helps turn food into energy. This process is called cellular respiration, and it is the fire that keeps you warm, the whisper that keeps you moving. You do not have to think about it. Breathing happens whether you wish it or not. That is the work of your brainstem, deep and silent, always watching. The medulla oblongata sends its rhythm outward, a pulse, a signal, a reminder. Breathe now, breathe again. Even as you sleep, even when you forget, your body remembers. Breath is the first thing you do when you enter the world, and the last thing you do when you leave it. Still, the breath is not yours alone. It passes from you to trees, from trees to sky, from sky to others. Every exhale becomes an offering, every inhale a gift received. And the molecules within that air, the oxygen, the carbon, the nitrogen, they are endlessly recycled. The breath you take now may once have filled the lungs of a wolf on a mountaintop, a whale in a distant ocean, a child playing beneath falling leaves. Breath is shared. It does not belong to anyone. It is the world's way of keeping us woven together. Even the shape of your lungs tells a story. Look closely, and you'll see it echoes the branches of a tree. This is no accident. Nature often repeats what works. Trees draw carbon dioxide in through their leaves and release oxygen. Lungs do the opposite. They inhale oxygen and release carbon dioxide. Together, they form a perfect loop. When you breathe out, the trees breathe in. When they exhale, you inhale. It is a partnership written in silence, a dance without steps, a poem without words. In the ancient past, long before humans stood upright, creatures emerged from the water. They carried the memory of gills, the need to draw oxygen from their surroundings, but the land offered something new, open air. Evolution shaped the lungs to meet this gift. Slowly, steadily, the architecture of breath changed. Muscles formed to draw air in, the diaphragm rising and falling like the ocean tide. Ribs became a cage to protect the softness within, and the lungs themselves became more efficient, more delicate, more precise. Yet they remain vulnerable. Smoke, dust, pollution, these can cloud the miracle. Lungs, so vital, are also fragile. They ask for care, for rest, for clean air and quiet. They are not built for noise or haste, and they are meant to be listened to. A long, slow breath can calm a racing heart. A moment of stillness can restore balance. In many traditions, breath is tied to spirit, to soul. In some languages, the word for breath and life is the same. In others, breath is the name for the divine. Consider how breath changes with feeling. When you are afraid, it quickens. When you are calm, it slows. When you cry, it hiccups and stutters. When you laugh, it bursts and dances. Breath is not just biology, it is expression. It is a language all your own. Even in silence, your lungs speak. And what of the stars? The origin of it all? The oxygen in your breath came from one kind of star, the carbon in your body from another. These atoms were formed in the furnace of fusion, then flung into space in great celestial exhalations. Over time, these atoms cooled, joined, formed dust, and that dust became planets, and those planets became homes for life. You are not separate from the stars. You are what they left behind. The lungs you use now are built from their gifts. Each breath you take is a continuation of their work. The fire that once lit the sky now burns gently in your blood. The silence of space now hums quietly in your chest. You are the breath of the universe made flesh. So breathe slowly now. Let the air remind you of your place in this story. Let your lungs be a sanctuary, not just for air, but for awe. The next time you feel the wind against your face, remember, it is not just weather. It is the same breath that has travelled through stars, forests, oceans and hearts, only now it rests in you. Now drift with the breath one last time, not backward, but forward. Past the memory of stardust, past the shape of lungs and the quiet trade of gases, towards something softer, something felt, not seen, for the lungs are more than tools of survival. They are instruments of presence. They mark each moment, gently counting time. Each breath is a page turned, a footstep taken, a moment lived and never quite repeated. From the first cry of a newborn to the final sigh of a life complete, the breath draws the arc of existence. It is so quiet we forget it's there, and yet without it nothing else can begin. It is the rhythm beneath every story, and like all rhythms, it shapes how we feel. Breathing deeply can slow the heart. Breathing quickly can stir it. Shallow breath can come with worry, full breath with peace. This is not just habit. It is chemistry. It is the language of your body, whispering how to return to yourself. Inside your lungs there are no clocks, no calendars, no noise, only movement and stillness, expanding and releasing. When you are angry, scared or tired, your breath is the first to change, a subtle alarm sounding from within. But it is also the first place healing begins. In practices old as memory, meditation, prayer, quiet reflection, breath is the doorway inward. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Each inhale pulls in the world. Each exhale lets it go. And still it is not just you. Even now as you breathe, forests are breathing with you. Somewhere in the darkness of soil, roots are drawing in air to grow. High above, leaves are fluttering with exchange. Beneath waves, coral reefs pulse oxygen into the sea. The earth is not silent. It breathes with us, through us, because of us. We are linked by the air we share. A breath exhaled in joy or sorrow may cross oceans, pass between strangers, enter the lungs of a whale or a fox or a child not yet born. There is no line dividing mine from yours. Air doesn't recognize borders. It moves freely, a traveller without a name, weaving the lives of all beings into one invisible thread. And the atoms in that air, the carbon, the oxygen, they are recycled endlessly, never lost, only shared. Perhaps that's why breath feels so sacred, not because it is rare, but because it is everywhere, because it cannot be owned, because it connects everything, life, death, memory, starlight. You breathe the same oxygen once breathed by ancient trees, woolly mammoths, distant ancestors, maybe even the same molecules that once passed through the lungs of those who gazed up at the sky and wondered where breath comes from. Science tells us that the universe began in fire, in expansion, in light. But perhaps just as important is what followed. The cooling, the settling, the gathering of gases, the forming of stars and planets, and at last, life. Breath was not born in a moment. It took billions of years to become possible. It required stars to live and die. It required Earth to form oceans, an atmosphere. It required cells to learn how to use light. The lungs inside your chest carry the history of all that. And still, they ask for so little, a moment of stillness, a quiet place to expand, clean air, time. They are not demanding, but they are honest. When they are strained, you feel it. When they are nourished, you feel that too. That is why even in silence, your breath can speak. It tells you how you're doing before you even know yourself. It can guide you home to your body when your thoughts have drifted far. To breathe is to remember, not just who you are, but what you're made of. You're not built of stillness, but of movement, of cycling molecules, of exchange, of life flowing in and out like tides. That is the story of breath. Not a beginning or an end, but a rhythm that holds everything together. Now imagine the world without breath, a sky without movement, a body without air, a planet where stillness is not calm but final. It is a sobering thought, and yet it reminds us how precious each inhale is, not just for humans, but for all things that live. Each breath is a moment borrowed, a gift received. Perhaps the most beautiful truth is this: your lungs do not just keep you alive, They keep you connected and to your ancestors, to the trees outside your window, to the stars that died to give you the atoms you use to breathe. That connection is real. You feel it each time your chest rises and falls. So the next time you notice your breath, take a moment. Not to change it, not to control it, just to feel it. Let it remind you, you are here. You are made of old things made new. You are not separate from the sky. You carry it inside you with every breath. This is the story of lungs, written in atoms, passed down through stars, shaped by time, and made alive in you. Breathing stardust, you are the continuation of something vast, something tender, something eternal. Far beneath your every breath is a secret too old for words. The story of a gas you cannot see, cannot touch, yet cannot live without. Oxygen, light as wind and soft as nothing, floats invisibly through the world. It fills your lungs, feeds your blood, fuels your mind. But it wasn't always here. There was a time long ago when Earth's skies were breathless, silent in a different way, not because they were peaceful, but because nothing lived long enough to take a breath. The planet then was wild, young, unfinished. Volcanoes roared into clouds, oceans boiled in places and froze in others. The air was thick with gases that choked instead of healed, methane, ammonia, hydrogen. There was no blue sky, no birds, no trees, just a heavy atmosphere and the slow churning of possibility. And into this hostile world, tiny beings emerged, so small you could not see them, yet so powerful they would change the planet forever. They were cyanobacteria, and they learned a kind of magic, how to capture sunlight and use it to turn water and carbon dioxide into energy. In doing so, they exhaled something new, oxygen. At first, it was just a whisper in the air, a byproduct of living. But slowly, over millions of years, that whisper became a flood. These tiny cells didn't know they were changing the world. They were just surviving. Yet their survival would create everything we now know as life. At first, oxygen was dangerous. It reacted with everything it touched. It rusted iron, changed chemistry, broke bonds. It poisoned many early organisms that had evolved to live without it. For a while it seemed oxygen might be more curse than gift, but Earth was patient, it had time, and over eons the planet changed. The oxygen began to settle in the oceans, binding with iron, to form rust-red layers of rock still visible today. Then it crept into the atmosphere. What followed is known as the Great Oxygenation Event. The skies cleared. New kinds of cells began to form, ones that could breathe, that could use this strange new gas to unlock energy. These were the ancestors of every plant, every animal, every human. Without oxygen, there would be no heartbeats, no eyes, no memory, no you. But the oxygen we breathe now is not the same as it was then. It is alive with history. Each molecule has travelled far, through leaves, through lungs, through fire and flood. The oxygen in your blood today may have once been exhaled by a tree in a rainforest, or bubbled from seaweed in an ocean current. It may have escaped from the mouth of a dinosaur, or burned in the lungs of an ancient mammal leaping through grass. Oxygen is not born in your lungs, it is borrowed. And each breath you take is a kind of inheritance, a gift passed down through time. It moves through the world not in straight lines, but in loops and cycles. It dances through photosynthesis and respiration, through flame and fermentation, through birth and death. It is the breath of the planet itself, flowing constantly, always moving, never still. And yet, for all its power, oxygen is humble. It does not call attention to itself, it does not shout. It arrives without sound, slips into your lungs, and disappears into your bloodstream, becoming part of you. It powers your thoughts, your movement, your dreams, and then, just as quietly, it leaves, transformed, but not gone. It returns to the air, waiting to begin the cycle again. Think of the forests, think of the oceans, think of the moss that clings to stone, the algae drifting beneath ice. All of them breathe with you. Not in the same rhythm, not in the same way, but part of the same system. You are never breathing alone. You are part of a great exchange, an unbroken flow that began billions of years ago and continues moment by moment inside you. And if you were to trace it backward, molecule by molecule, you would arrive at a time when the world was just beginning to learn how to breathe. You would see the first shadows of oxygen rising from water, dissolving into sky, reshaping everything it touched. You would see a planet holding its breath, and then, at last, exhaling. It is strange to think that something so vital could come from something so small, that the breath in your chest today owes its existence to creatures too small to see, working slowly, tirelessly, for millennia. But that is the nature of life. It builds itself in quiet ways, in places we overlook, in patterns we do not always understand, and when it succeeds, it does not boast. It simply continues, like breath, like memory, like oxygen itself. So when you breathe now, know that it is more than air, it is story. It is time. It is the gift of ancient oceans, of tiny blue-green cells, of a planet that learned how to breathe long before we arrived. The oxygen in your lungs is older than mountains, older than bones, older than language. And yet it is as close as the next breath you take. Let us drift deeper, now that we have met the ancient beginnings of oxygen. We have seen its birth from quiet light and patient life, but to truly understand the gift it brings, we must follow it through the hidden architecture of existence. Because oxygen is not only a molecule, it is a sculptor, a silent artist that has shaped the living world with each invisible stroke. Every tree you've ever touched, every breath you've taken, every heartbeat that thudded quietly beneath your skin has been a response to it. In the beginning, oxygen was change. Now it is rhythm. In the ocean, long before land was green, oxygen transformed the tides. The early seas were thick and dark, filled with iron and sulfur. But as oxygen bubbled into them, it did not simply float. It reacted. It settled. It began to reshape the chemistry of the waters. Life responded. New organisms evolved to use this strange substance as fuel. They were not fast or loud. They were tiny, floating colonies, each one finding new ways to breathe, and in their breathing, they lit the fuse of evolution. Eventually, some of these creatures became complex. They formed mitochondria, the engines inside each cell that burn oxygen and sugar to create energy. This process, cellular respiration, is quiet but powerful. It produces more energy than any system before it. With this new power, life could grow, not just wide but deep. Tissues could form, muscles could move, brains could think. And with this came everything we now call biology, not in a sudden leap but in slow, careful steps. On land, the story continued. Plants rose toward the sun, their leaves spreading like green lungs. Inside them, photosynthesis created oxygen, hour by hour. Forests became oxygen factories. The Earth's atmosphere thickened with it. Eventually, animals followed. First insects, then reptiles, then mammals. Each one born into an air rich with invisible fuel. Each one depending breath after breath on a gas too quiet to notice. It is astonishing that something we cannot see holds such power. But that is oxygen's way. It does not boast. It simply gives. Even now, the breath inside your lungs follows the same patterns as those ancient cells in the ocean. Oxygen enters, energy is made, and life continues. There are no fireworks, no music, just quiet chemistry happening again and again. And yet it is this chemistry that makes everything else possible. Your thoughts, your memories, your laughter. All of it floats on a current of oxygen flowing through your blood. And the oxygen itself. It does not stay long. Once inside you, it clings to hemoglobin, a protein shaped like a cradle. This cradle holds it gently, carries it to the cells that need it most, and lets it go. Then the hemoglobin returns to gather more. It is a cycle of giving and returning, not unlike the tides, not unlike time itself. Even in your bloodstream, oxygen moves with a kind of grace. But this grace has limits. The balance of oxygen in the world is delicate. Too much and cells burn too quickly. Too little and life slows, suffocates. The Earth has learned to hold this balance, with forests and oceans as partners. Trees breathe in what we breathe out. They return oxygen to the sky. Coral reefs, though fragile, pulse with photosynthetic life. Phytoplankton, invisible ocean plants, produce more than half the world's oxygen, though they are smaller than dust. They are the breath of the sea. This balance can be disrupted. When forests fall, when oceans warm, when pollution chokes the air, oxygen suffers, not loudly but quietly. A shift here, a drop there, and the world begins to feel the strain. But the story of oxygen is also a story of resilience. It has survived mass extinctions, ice ages, great fires. It adapts, it continues, and we, if we choose, can help it. Your lungs are not just part of your body, they are part of a system that loops through the entire living world. You are connected to the air that once flowed through ancient ferns, through animals long extinct, through the skies of a younger Earth. You are not just breathing, you are participating in a ceremony that has lasted for billions of years, a ceremony of giving, receiving, remembering. Sometimes in stillness you can feel it, that quiet pull of air, the lift of the chest, the pause between exhale and inhale. It is easy to forget that these moments are sacred, that they were made possible by time, by light, by invisible creatures who changed the world long before we arrived. But when you remember, the breath becomes more than breath. It becomes a kind of gratitude. Gratitude not only for survival, but for beauty. For the way air moves through trees and tides. For the way mountains release it in cold gusts. For the way it touches skin, enters blood, disappears and returns. We do not own oxygen. We are part of its path. And when we protect the forests, the oceans, the fragile places, we are not just protecting nature, we are protecting breath itself. It is humbling to think that every living thing on Earth, from dragonflies to elephants, from coral to humans, breathes the same kind of air, that each one is part of the same invisible rhythm, and it is even more humbling to realize that this rhythm began with something microscopic, something quiet, something old enough to remember the Earth before breath. Oxygen does not need to speak to be powerful. It exists, it enters, it transforms, and in doing so, it gives meaning to everything else. So breathe now, gently. Let your breath remind you that you are not just living, you are participating in a story written across oceans, across centuries, across species. It is a story made not of words, but of air. It is the memory of a planet learning how to live. Let us now follow the breath to its quiet conclusion. Not an end, but a return. For the breath you take does not vanish when it leaves you. It becomes part of the world again, rejoining the endless loop of air that moves through forests and oceans and time itself. Oxygen is not simply a thing we use. It is a companion, a presence, a thread woven through every living moment, holding together the fabric of life with invisible care. There is wonder in how unassuming it is. Oxygen has no scent, no shape, no sound, and yet it cradles you from the inside. It lights the fire in your cells. It rides through your bloodstream like a silent boat, delivering energy to places you never think about. The tips of your fingers, the backs of your eyes, the small muscles between your ribs. Every movement you make is made possible by its quiet service. And once its job is done, it leaves without complaint, waiting to be welcomed again with the next breath. This rhythm is so gentle that we forget it is extraordinary. You breathe more than 20,000 times each day, without effort, without thought, and each time oxygen enters your body becomes part of you and leaves changed. No ceremony, no announcement, just breath after breath cycling endlessly through the story of being alive. But this story isn't yours alone. The same breath that powers your voice may have once drifted through a falcon's wing. The oxygen in your cells might have been part of a leaf that danced in sunlight, or part of a wave that curled and crashed into coral reef. Life is not a line, it is a circle, and oxygen is the quiet traveller, moving through all things, linking all lives. In some traditions, breath is the soul, in others it is the voice of the spirit, the rhythm of the divine. And while science may not speak in such terms, it too sees breath as sacred. Without oxygen, there is no fire in the body, no thought in the brain, no spark in the nerves. It is not an accessory. It is the foundation, the invisible light that fuels everything you are. And yet, for all its power, oxygen can be fragile. A shift in the atmosphere, a change in the ocean, a loss of green, and its presence fades. In recent years, scientists have begun to observe oxygen minimum zones in the sea, places where oxygen levels drop so low that life begins to disappear. Fish cannot breathe. Plankton dies. The chain breaks. The rhythm falters. On land, deforestation chips away at the planet's lungs. With fewer trees to exhale oxygen, the balance tilts. Wildfires consume both forests and air. Pollution thickens the sky. The delicate cycle begins to strain. And yet even here there is hope, because the earth remembers how to breathe. Given space, forests return. Given protection, coral recovers. Given care, the air clears. The breath can heal, not just in your body, but in the world itself. And your role in this is simple but profound. Every act of protection, every moment of mindfulness, every breath taken with gratitude adds to the balance. It is easy to forget in the rush of living that something so small as a breath can carry such weight. But it does, because it is not just air, it is history, it is memory, it is the planet's way of staying alive through you. Look around. Every green leaf, every bird in flight, every mammal at rest is breathing. They may not know the word oxygen, but they live by its grace. You share that with them. You are part of the same atmosphere, the same exchange. You're not above nature. You're woven into it breath by breath. And the oxygen itself, it continues. Long after you exhale, it floats onward. Perhaps into a tree, perhaps into the soil, perhaps into the lungs of someone far away. It does not need to stay with you to be meaningful. Its power lies in its journey, in its ability to pass through, to touch, to sustain and to move on. That is the poetry of air, that it never belongs to us, but we are allowed to carry it for a while. So take a breath now and feel its softness. Know that what you are taking in is older than anything you can name. It was shaped by stars, filtered by oceans, carried by forests and offered to you without demand. It is not asking for anything in return, only to be part of your story for a moment. And when you let it go, it will carry something of you with it. Not just carbon or heat, but presence. The fact that you were here, that you breathed, that you lived, that you were part of this ancient, invisible dance that connects all things. This is the forgotten origin of oxygen. Not just its chemical birth, but its emotional one. It is the breath of a planet that wanted to live. It is the sigh of time, the inhale of history. And it moves through you now, as it once moved through oceans, through mountains, through the lungs of those who came before. In this way, every breath is a reunion with the earth, with the past, with the stars that gave us the atoms we now breathe. You are not separate from the air, you are its echo. So breathe gently, breathe gratefully. And remember, you are made in part of the wind that once touched the sky. There was a time when no one breathed. Not a single ripple of air passed through a throat. Not one chest rose or fell. The world was alive in its own quiet way, through currents and tides, heat and motion, but breath, the drawing in of air, the release of it again, had not yet begun. The earth had water, it had sky, it had the building blocks of life, but it had not yet learned to inhale. In the shallows of ancient seas, something began to stir. Tiny creatures, simple and soft, drifted through the water. They did not have lungs or gills. They absorbed what they needed through skin and membrane, living on gradients of chemistry and warmth. These were the first experiments in life, and for millions of years they floated and divided, lived and died, changing little, and yet preparing everything. Over time, some of them grew more complex, a fold here, a pouch there. Their shapes shifted to make the most of their surroundings. In low-oxygen waters, every molecule of air mattered. Some of these creatures began to develop hollow spaces, primitive sacs where air could gather. These were not lungs yet, but the idea of lungs. Pockets of possibility growing inside bodies that were learning to touch the sky. Now imagine a fish, ancient and strange, swimming in a warm, shallow pool that is drying in the sun. Its gills cannot pull enough oxygen from the warming water. It rises, not out of curiosity, but necessity. It lifts its mouth above the surface, gulps the air, and breathing shifts. Oxygen finds its way in, through mouth, through pouch, into blood. The fish does not yet know it, but this is the beginning of a revolution. The first breath. It would take millions more years for those breathing sacs to become lungs, for limbs to grow strong enough to carry life onto land. But the pattern was set. The body had learned to draw in air, to hold it, to feed itself with it. And once that knowledge was written into cells, it was never forgotten. Lungs are not just parts, they are memories. They hold the shape of evolution inside them. Every fold, every bronchiole, every alveolus is a whisper from the past. A message carved in tissue that says, I remember the sea, I remember the shallows, I remember the first time we reached for the sky and found it full of breath. The creatures that followed, amphibians, reptiles, birds, mammals, all carried these memories forward. Each one added to the design, shaping it for different lives. Frogs learned to breathe through skin and lungs. Birds developed air sacs that let oxygen flow in a single direction. Whales returned to the sea but kept their lungs, rising to the surface for every breath. And eventually humans stood upright, with lungs tucked safely inside a cage of ribs, soft and ready. The human lung is a marvel of quiet design, not just for its shape but for its sensitivity. It does not simply bring in air, it senses it. The nerves lining the trachea can detect the warmth, the moisture, the dust. The lungs respond, adjusting breath, clearing pathways, keeping balance. They are not just tools, they are guardians. And yet they do all this without sound, without complaint. From the moment you are born, they begin, first in shock, then in rhythm. They fill with air, collapse, rise again. You do not command them. They are older than your will. They answer to something deeper, the medulla, the brainstem, the pulse of ancient design, still humming in the background of your being. That first breath at birth is a doorway. Inside the womb, your lungs are waiting, practicing small motions, filling with fluid, preparing. But they do not breathe air until the moment you emerge. Then in one sudden gasp, they open. The fluid clears, oxygen rushes in, blood patterns change. The body becomes something new, no longer part of another, but whole on its own, alive because of breath. It is a fragile beginning, and yet it is powerful. That first breath is enough to change the body forever. It sets in motion the systems that will carry you for a lifetime. It connects you to the chain of breath that stretches back through time, to fish gasping in the mud, to amphibians on the shore, to mammals in the trees. Your lungs are not just yours, they are shared, they are inherited. And what do they carry? Not just air, but life. In each breath, oxygen moves into your blood, finds the cells that need it, and disappears into their inner fire. There, it helps burn the food you've eaten into energy. This is not metaphor. It is chemistry. It is transformation. Oxygen becomes part of you. It gives itself so that you can move, think, speak, dream. And it all began with one breath, not yours but the first. That first inhale, taken by a creature who did not know what it was doing, who did not know it was writing the future. That moment lives in you still. It echoes in every breath you take, in every rise and fall of your chest. You are not separate from that story. You are its continuation. So breathe now slowly. Let your body remember. Before there were words, there was breath. Before there were songs, there was breath. Before anything in your life had a name, your lungs had already opened, and they have never stopped. Let's drift further into the story, beyond the moment of first breath, into the deep unfolding pattern it set in motion. Once breath began, it never stopped. Life evolved around it, clinging to the rhythm of inhale and exhale as if to a pulse. In every creature that would come after, breath would take on new shapes, new rhythms, new meanings, but the idea remained the same, to draw the world inside, to change it, and to let it go again. In reptiles, lungs stretched wide to hold air longer. In mammals, the diaphragm emerged, a dome-shaped muscle that acts like a gentle pump, pulling air into the chest and pressing it out again. This muscle changed everything. It allowed breathing to become more efficient, more subtle. It freed energy for other things, running, climbing, nursing, speaking. Breath no longer had to be loud, it became a part of the background, quiet and faithful. Inside you, the diaphragm still moves with every breath, even when you sleep. It rises and falls like a tide, helping air to flow deep into your lungs. Beneath your ribs, it works without pause, massaging your organs with each gentle motion. It is a silent partner in every moment of your life, shaping your breath from the inside. But breath does more than keep us alive. It allows us to feel. Emotions ride breath like birds on the wind. When you are frightened, your breath shortens. When you are at peace, it deepens. Grief can come in gasps, joy and laughter. Breath is the link between your body and your mind, the language they speak to each other, when words fall away. In ancient times, people noticed this. They watched animals breathe in stillness and in movement. They saw the way humans sighed in sorrow, how breath caught in moments of wonder. And slowly, breath became more than a biology. It became sacred. In Sanskrit, the word prana means both breath and life force. In Chinese medicine, ki flows through the body like air through lungs. In many languages, the word for soul is the same as the word for breath. Across time and cultures, people sense that something holy lived in the space between inhale and exhale, and science, in its own quiet way, agrees, for it is in the breath that the body comes alive. When oxygen enters the bloodstream, it binds to hemoglobin, a protein shaped like a cradle, and is carried to every cell in your body. There, it enters mitochondria and helps turn sugar into energy. Without oxygen, cells cannot function. The body cannot think. The spirit cannot stay. Yet oxygen is not the only player. The breath carries out waste as well, and carbon dioxide, the shadow left behind by metabolism. This waste is not useless. It helps regulate pH, keeps the body in balance. When you hold your breath, it is not a lack of oxygen that makes you gasp. It is the rise of carbon dioxide, knocking gently at your awareness, asking to be released. Your body knows how to balance these things. It measures carbon levels in the blood and adjusts breathing accordingly. You do not need to think about this. It happens whether you are awake or asleep, joyful or grieving. The breath is loyal. It stays with you, steady and unnoticed, until the moment you finally notice it. And when you do, when you pause and really feel your breath, something changes. The world slows. Thoughts soften. The present moment widens. Breathing with awareness is not just a trick of the mind. It changes the body. It lowers heart rate, calms the nervous system, stills the restless thoughts that crowd the mind. It is a doorway back to stillness, one you carry with you always. Even in pain, breath is there. In hospitals, doctors listen to breath sounds to understand what's hidden. A stethoscope reveals not just the beat of the heart, but the song of the lungs, their wheeze or hush, their fullness or strain. Breath is a signal, a guide, a quiet truth. It tells us how we are before we even know. In every moment, your breath is responding to the world. Climbing stairs, it quickens. At rest, it slows. When you speak, it shapes your voice. When you sing, it dances through your throat. Breath is not passive. It creates, it expresses. It connects you to others in conversation, in silence, in song. And beyond humans, breath takes many forms. Insects breathe through spiracles, tiny holes in their sides. Birds use air sacs that allow oxygen to flow in one direction, always fresh, always moving. Amphibians absorb oxygen through damp skin. Whales dive deep and return, spraying air into the sky in misty plumes. Each creature has learned a different rhythm, but all are built on the same truth. To live is to breathe. And the breath itself, it has not changed. The oxygen in your lungs now was here long before you were born. It moved through leaves, through lungs, through fire. It may have passed through a wolf on a mountain, a deer in the grass, a parent who once held you close. Air is not new, is only new to you in this moment, in this breath. In this way, every breath is a bridge between past and future, between self and world, between what was and what can still be. Your body may be young or old, joyful or tired, but your breath is always now, always ready, always patient, and it asks for so little in return. A moment of attention, a pause in the noise, a chance to be felt. Because when you feel your breath, you feel your life, not in ideas or thoughts, but in the soft rise and fall of being, in the quiet gift that has never stopped giving. So take another breath. Let it be sent, let it be yours. Let it carry with it the memory of all who have breathed before you, from the fish in shallow pools to the children just learning to speak. You are part of that chain, that rhythm, that miracle. You are not only breathing, you are remembering. You are continuing a story that began long before you and will go on long after, a story told in air. Let us return now to the beginning, not in time but in feeling. That first breath of rain, whether it was taken by a small creature in a shrinking tide pool or a newborn arriving into light, was not just the start of a life, it was the beginning of belonging. To breathe is to say yes to the world. It is to let something outside of you enter and change you. It is to trust that there will be air again after the exhale. Breath is an act of faith, repeated thousands of times each day. Think of the moments when breath speaks loudest, not in words but in presence. The pause before a leap, the gasp at something beautiful, the sigh when grief lifts, if only for a moment, the breath after laughter, tangled with joy. These are the places where breath becomes more than survival. It becomes connection to the self, to others, to life. And yet, even without thought or emotion, breath continues. In sleep, in silence, in stillness, the body knows what to do. Your lungs do not wait for permission. They draw in the world and release it again, making space for the next moment. They keep time when the rest of you forgets. In this way, breath is not just life, it is the rhythm beneath it. But the world we live in can pull us away from this rhythm. The noise of our thoughts, the pressure of our days, the weight of worry, all of it can tighten the chest, shorten the breath. We begin to live at the edge of our lungs, barely filling them, barely noticing. And when this becomes habit, something deeper is lost. Not just calm, but clarity, presence, the quiet center of ourselves that only breath can reach. That is why, across cultures, breath has always been a path home. In meditation, the breath is a teacher. In prayer, it is a vessel. In song, it becomes expression. Even in grief, we are told to take a breath, because the breath is the only place we can truly begin again. Return now to the body. Inside your chest, your lungs are still working, still rising and falling. Their lining is soft, wet, tender. Every breath passes through membranes as thin as a spider's thread, where oxygen and carbon dioxide meet. Cross paths exchange, and from there, blood carries oxygen outward, to your fingertips, your spine, your scalp. Every cell gets its share. No one is forgotten. Breath reaches everywhere. Even the bones benefit. Oxygen feeds the marrow. Where new blood cells are made, it feeds the heart, which pumps its rhythm alongside the breaths. It feeds the brain, which slows when air is low and brightens when breath is deep. The whole body dances to the tune of air even when we don't hear it. And when breath is lost, in illness, in fear, in the end, we feel its absence like nothing else. Struggling for air is among the most primal fears we know. That is not weakness, it is memory. It is the body remembering how essential breath has always been. From the first fish with proto-lungs to the infants of today, we are all shaped by the need to inhale. But just as breath can be lost, it can be found again. Slowly, gently, with attention. You can lengthen the inhale. You can soften the exhale. You can return to the space between, where the breath holds for a moment, not quite in, not quite out. And in that stillness, the mind begins to settle. Breath becomes presence. Presence becomes peace. And in that peace, we remember that breath is not ours alone. It comes from trees, from oceans, from the sky. It was made possible by the work of ancient cells, by the generosity of plants, by the design of bodies long forgotten. It is not something we invented. It is something we inherited, and it connects us, not just to life, but to each other. The air you breathe now may have touched a glacier. It may have circled a rainforest, passed through the beak of a hawk, the petals of a flower, the lungs of a stranger on the other side of the world. This is not fantasy, this is the science of air. It moves, it mixes, it is shared, always. And so, in a way, every breath you take is a quiet reunion with the world, with history, with the shared act of being alive. And every exhale is a gift returned, a contribution to the invisible web that holds all breathing things. Your lungs, shaped like trees, mirror the branches outside your window. The alveoli, like leaves, exchange gases just as forests do. The breath inside you is not separate from the wind in the trees. It is the same cycle repeating in different forms. So what is the breath, really? It is chemistry, yes, but also poetry. It is structure, but also spirit. It is the first thing we do, and the last. It is the quiet friend who never leaves, the rhythm keeper of your body, the bridge between thought and being. When you do not know what else to do, breathe. When you feel too much, breathe. When you have forgotten how to feel and breathe, the breath will not solve everything, but it will hold you while you wait for the world to soften again. And when it is time to let go, when the final breath comes, and even then, it is not an end. It is a return, the air leaves you and rejoins the whole. The cycle continues. Life makes room for life, and the breath that was once yours becomes part of someone else's first gasp. In this way, the story of the first breath never ends. It is passed forward, body to body, moment to moment, as soft as a whisper, as vast as the ski. You are breathing it now. Long before your lungs learned to breathe, before Earth formed its first seas, before even the sun began to shine, there was dust. Not the dust that gathers on shelves or dances in sunbeams, but cosmic dust, ancient and pure. It floated through the darkness of space like quiet ash from forgotten fires. It came from stars, those enormous furnaces of light, as they burned through their lives, then collapsed in silence or exploded in brilliance. That dust is where you began. 'Tis the matter that makes your breath possible and your body real. Inside every breath you take is oxygen, and every oxygen atom in your lungs was born in the core of a star. Billions of years ago, those stars fused lighter elements into heavier ones, hydrogen into helium, helium into carbon, carbon into oxygen. This was not a gentle process. It was violent, searing, magnificent. And when the star had nothing left to burn, it died, releasing its contents into the galaxy. That's how the dust began to spread. Through supernovas, through winds of stellar decay, through the quiet collapse of giants, that stardust gathered into clouds, and those clouds over time formed solar systems. One of them became ours. Earth was shaped from this same material, metal, gas, rock, and carbon. And when Earth cooled enough for oceans to form and air to settle, the elements of breath, oxygen, nitrogen, hydrogen, were already here, waiting for life to arrive, waiting for lungs to be imagined. It is humbling to know this. The atoms in your lungs are older than Earth itself. Some are over 10 billion years old. They have drifted through galaxies, through comets, through storms of interstellar light. And now they sit within you, quiet, invisible, essential. They are not yours in the way a possession is yours. They belong to the universe. You are only borrowing them, shaping them into breath, then releasing them again. When you inhale, you are not just taking in air. You are taking in history, cosmic history. Every oxygen molecule may have once passed through water, through soil, through a plant's leaf, but before that, it was made in a sun. Not our sun, perhaps. A different one. A sun that lived, died, and gave itself away so that you could someday live. Your lungs hold about 6 litres of air. At rest, you breathe in and out nearly half a litre at a time. In that air are trillions of molecules, oxygen, nitrogen, carbon dioxide, each one part of a journey that began in space. Your body has learned how to use this air wisely. The alveoli in your lungs are tiny sacs, soft as soap bubbles, where oxygen crosses into blood. From there it becomes you, part of your muscles, your brain, your thoughts. You are not separate from the world, you are made of it. Even the carbon in your body, the very structure of your cells, was forged in stars. Carbon is the backbone of life, the element that can form long, flexible chains. No other element does this as elegantly. That's why life chose carbon. And where did carbon come from? Not from Earth. From stars. Dying stars. Collapsing stars. Stars that burned so hot they made something new, then scattered it like ashes into space. It is no accident that the breath we take in contains both oxygen and carbon. These two elements are partners in life. We take in oxygen to release energy. We release carbon dioxide as a result. Plants do the opposite. They take in carbon dioxide, release oxygen. It is a quiet exchange, looping endlessly between us and the green world. But at the heart of it is something much older, the memory of stars. When you sit quietly and feel your breath rise and fall, you are not just experiencing a function of the body. You are participating in a cosmic rhythm. The oxygen in your lungs wants to move, into blood, into cells, into energy. This desire is not emotional. It is chemical, but it is also poetic. It is the pull of ancient stars whispering their purpose through your veins. Even the iron in your blood, the reason your blood is red, came from a star. Iron can only form in the final seconds of a star's life. When a massive star dies in a supernova, it creates iron, then flings it across the universe. Without that explosion, there would be no iron in your body, no hemoglobin to carry oxygen, no breath that becomes thought. So when you take a breath, consider how many pieces had to fall into place. A star had to live, it had to die, its remains had to travel, gather, form a planet. That planet needed oceans, air, and time. Life had to emerge, struggle, evolve, lungs had to be imagined, blood had to learn to carry oxygen, And then, finally, you, sitting here, drawing air into Stardust lungs. You are not distant from the stars. You are their echo, your chest rising and falling as the sound of the universe remembering itself. Every breath is a quiet return, a coming home to where it all began. So breathe now, and let that truth settle in your bones. You're not only alive, you're cosmic. You're not just a person, you're a place where the galaxy gathers. The dust of stars has found a way to breathe through you. Let us follow that breath inward, into the stardust that became structure, not drifting now through space, but flowing through the finely built corridors of the body. The human chest is not just a container for air. It is a cathedral of motion, designed to hold and protect the sacred act of breathing. Ribs open and close like quiet gates. The diaphragm lifts and lowers like the soft beat of a drum. And in the center, your lungs unfold, not just with air, but with memory. Inside them are cells built from atoms that once belonged to suns. Every inhale you take is filtered by a living system of design. Air enters through the nose, passing fine hairs that catch dust and pollen, then flows down the windpipe, dividing again and again into smaller branches, bronchi, bronchioles, like a tree turned upside down. This is no poetic coincidence. The branching structure of your lungs mirrors the branching of rivers, roots, and galaxies. Nature repeats its patterns where they work best. And in all of these branches, the smallest ends, the alveoli, are where the true exchange happens. These alveoli are thin as silk, wrapped in capillaries, and they do something incredible. They allow oxygen born in stars to slip from the breath into your blood. This transfer is fast, constant, invisible. It happens millions of times each second. It happens while you sleep, while you speak, while you wait in silence. It happens so often we stop noticing. But the universe does not forget. The stars may be quiet now, but their atoms are busy, living new lives inside of you. That oxygen flows outward through arteries, reaching every part of the body. Some molecules drift to your fingertips, helping you hold a pen, a hand, a hope. Others travel to your brain, letting you think, remember, dream. Each tiny journey is powered by the chemistry of stars, but oxygen is not the only traveller. Carbon returns, not in shame but in service. It is the result of burning energy. You exhale it and the trees receive it. A perfect loop, ancient and new, sacred and biological. And beyond oxygen and carbon, other stardust elements remain. Calcium, built in dying stars, now lives in your bones. Phosphorus, essential for DNA, once drifted in interstellar clouds. Potassium, sodium, magnesium, all gifts from collapsed suns. These elements make your nerves fire, your muscles move, your heartbeat steady. You're not simply carrying stardust. You're made from it. Every breath you take is filtered through cosmic materials, shaped into life. It is easy to forget this. We breathe without effort, without ceremony. But beneath the simplicity is a web of complexity so rich, so finely tuned, that even now we are still learning its secrets. Scientists study lung tissue and blood chemistry, alveolar gas exchange and oxygen saturation. But beyond the measurements, there remains something deeper, the mystery of how the universe became the breath inside you. There is poetry in this science, not because it is imagined, but because it is true. The lungs are soft, delicate organs, and yet they carry the weight of stardust. They hold open the possibility of life in every moment. If one lung is injured, the other adjusts. If breath falters, the body slows, asks for stillness. If you climb a mountain, your lungs work harder, drawing in thinner air. If you dive into water, they tighten, conserve, wait. They do not complain, they adapt. And breath itself adapts. In joy, it becomes laughter. In sorrow, it becomes sighs. In wonder, it pauses. In fear, it catches. The lungs are the only organ that respond not just to physical need, but to feeling. They translate emotion into rhythm. That is why we tell people to breathe when they are overwhelmed. Breath is not only fuel, it is presence. It is the body's way of saying, I am still here. And though breath begins in the lungs, it ends in the world. What you exhale becomes part of the air again, to be breathed by another, touched by trees, dissolved in oceans. Air is not owned, it is shared. And so are the atoms within it. The oxygen you release may someday become part of a feather, a flower, a flame. Stardust moves on. And what of the stars themselves? Though many of the atoms in your body came from long-dead suns, the process continues. New stars are born. They burn, age, and scatter. The galaxy is still in motion. New dust forms, new elements swirl. Perhaps one day these atoms will shape a new kind of breath on a distant world in a distant life. Perhaps even now, far from here, something is inhaling for the very first time, and its breath too is made of stars. You are not alone in this. Every living thing on Earth breathes. Birds fill their lungs to sing, wolves howl under moonlight, horses exhale clouds into cold air, dolphins rise and breathe in arcs of silver light. All of them, like you, are part of the cosmic story. All of them carry star matter in their chests. All of them speak the language of breath. And that breath is old. Older than species, older than bones. It began as gas and dust, spun into form by gravity and time. It found its way into oceans, into cells, into lungs. And now it rests in you, waiting for nothing more than the next quiet inhale. So take it now, gently. Let the breath remind you not just of life, but of origin. You are not made from nowhere. You are the living answer to an ancient explosion. You are dust, organized into form. Your lungs, shaped to sing with air. You are the moment when the universe learned to breathe through a body. And every time you do, the stars breathe with you. Now breathe slowly and let the story settle. The dust that drifts within you is no longer drifting. It has found shape, found warmth, found purpose in your breath. It does not remember its journey, from the cause of stars to your lungs, but your body carries that memory for it. With each inhale, you do something extraordinary without knowing it. You complete a process that began before time was measured, before Earth was formed, before breath existed at all. But the story does not end with atoms and molecules. It continues with how those particles became people. Generations of life have inhaled the same oxygen, shared the same carbon, touched the same nitrogen. The air has passed from creature to creature, continent to continent, century to century. The stardust inside you may once have floated through the chest of a saber-toothed cat, a mountain lion, or a laughing child beneath ancient skies. You do not own these elements. You inherit them, and then pass them forward with every breath. Consider what it means to share atoms with those who came before, not metaphorically, physically. The same oxygen you breathe may have once filled the lungs of an ancestor you've never known, or a tree now long vanished. The carbon in your breath may have once been bound in a grain of wheat harvested thousands of years ago. These molecules do not disappear. They transform, they return, they become. That is the law of matter. Nothing is lost, only changed. And because your lungs are the place where the world and body meet, you become a place of transformation. With every breath, you participate in that sacred exchange. Air becomes energy, atoms become action, dust becomes life, and life in turn becomes breath. A newborn's first cry, a singer's held note, a runner's gasp, a sleeping child's gentle rhythm. All are made of the same cosmic particles, shaped by the same biological choreography. The stars have no voice, but they speak through you. They sing not in sound, but in the steady pulse of your respiration. This is why breath feels like something more than motion. It feels like remembering. The expansion of the chest, the fall of the diaphragm, the lightness that follows a deep exhale. They all echo a truth too vast to say aloud, that we are not separate from the sky, that the sky lives within us. And what happens when we forget? When we fill the air with smoke, cut down forests, warm the oceans? The cycle strains, oxygen levels dip, carbon builds, the balance shifts. The stardust inside us still tries to function, but the world it once knew is changing. The lungs that evolved to breathe clean air must now filter through haze. The breath slows or shortens, life tightens, but the stars are patient, and so is life. The world does not give up easily. It waits for us to remember that we are not outside it, that to protect the trees is to protect our own lungs, that to cool the oceans is to calm the rhythm of breath across the planet. That air is not just a backdrop, it is a relationship, one we must care for. When you walk through a forest, know that you are walking through your own lungs in another form. When you watch mist rise over the water, know that the moisture once rested inside someone's breath. When wind moves your hair, know that you are touching the same currents that once swirled through galaxies, then through the lungs of whales, then through the fields of flowers, and now, you. You are not alone, you are not separate, you are an opening in the universe through which stardust breathes. And someday long from now, when your own breath grows thin and quiet, the stardust within you will begin another journey. Your atoms will scatter, your oxygen will rise, your carbon will sink into soil or ride the wind. And from these particles, something new will be made. A leaf, a child, a storm, a breath. The lungs you used will not remain, but the matter will. It will return to the cycle that never ends. The cosmic dance will continue, the stars will keep burning, the air will keep moving, and the breath that once was yours will find its way into another life, another shape, another heartbeat. And maybe, just maybe, in some quiet moment, that new being will pause, take a breath, and wonder why it feels like a memory, why it feels like coming home. This is what it means to be made of stardust. Not only that we come from the stars, but that we continue their work. We inhale the universe, we carry it inside us, we return it gently with every exhale. So breathe once more and let it be soft. Let it be enough. Let it remind you that within your chest is more than air. There is age and fire and memory. There is sky, there is silence. There is the ancient story of matter learning to feel. You are not just breathing, you're completing the story of the stars. If you look closely at your lungs, not with your eyes, but with your imagination, you will see branches. They begin at the trachea, the windpipe that stands like the trunk of a tree, and then divide again and again into smaller limbs. Bronchi become bronchioles, bronchioles become alveolar ducts, and at the very tips the air ends in tiny sacs called alveoli, like the soft buds of invisible leaves. This is no accident of design. Your lungs look like trees because they follow the same rules. Not rules written by humans, but by the slow, silent logic of nature. It is a pattern called fractal geometry, a design that repeats itself at smaller and smaller scales. You see it in rivers, in lightning in the veins of leaves. You see it in coral, in frost, in your own blood vessels. And in the lungs it appears because the body needs to do something difficult, to spread something large, air, across something tiny, the inner surface of your chest. Fractals make that possible. They allow one tube to become many, and many to fill a space without wasting it. With each branching, breath moves closer to the blood. Inside you, more than 300 million alveoli lie nestled in soft pink clusters. If you could spread them out, they would cover the surface of a tennis court. But you don't feel them. They are quiet, gentle, working without notice. They are where the air finally meets the self, where oxygen crosses from the world into you, where carbon leaves you and returns to the sky. They are the leaves of your inner forests, soft, unseen, essential. And this forest breathes in rhythm with the trees outside your window. Not in the same way, not with lungs or muscles, but with a pattern just as real. Trees take in carbon dioxide, release oxygen. You do the opposite. The exchange is ancient, balanced, intimate. When you exhale, the trees breathe in. When they exhale, you breathe in. There is no moment when breath is yours alone. It is always shared. Look again at a tree. Its trunk splits into thick branches, those into thinner ones, then into twigs and leaves. It reaches toward light, just as your lungs reach toward life. Both draw in invisible gifts and return something vital. Both are shaped to capture what cannot be held, air, light, energy. Both are more than structure. They are systems of exchange, of transformation. In spring, trees bloom and stretch. In fall, they let go. Your lungs do the same, but every minute. They open, receive, release. They mirror the rhythm of the seasons on a smaller, faster scale. They are like trees turned inward, blooming in silence, shedding not leaves but carbon. This mirroring is not only poetic, it is biological. Trees and lungs evolved under the same sky, shaped by the same atmosphere. They responded to the same pressures, the need to exchange gases efficiently, to reach far with minimal effort, to distribute and collect. So nature used the same solution again and again. Branching, division, repetition, fractals, even the colour speaks of connection. In newborn lungs, fresh with air for the first time, the tissue is pale and rose-like, much like the blossom of a spring bud. In the lungs of those who have breathed long and deeply, the colours darken, deepen, not unlike a tree that has weathered many seasons. Life writes itself in soft tones, whether in bark or in breath, and the function goes beyond gases. Trees hold the soil, cool the air, provide shelter. Lungs do the same in a different domain. They regulate pH, filter toxins, humidify air, protect the body from harm. They are guardians, not just passageways. They decide what enters, what stays, what is expelled. Just as the forest shelters what lives beneath its canopy, your lungs shelter the heart, cushion the ribs, support the voice. Yes, the voice. Your breath is the root of all sound. Without air moving through your vocal cords, there is no speech, no laughter, no song. Every word you've ever spoken began as an inhale, carried upward, shaped by tongue and lips, and released into the world. Breath becomes voice. Voice becomes thought made real. The forest in your chest speaks, in its own quiet way. And so when you breathe deeply, you're doing more than feeding cells. You're participating in a design older than you. A design shared by rivers, by trees, by clouds, by lightning. A design that says, let what is whole become many so it may reach further. Let what is small be part of something vast. This is why your lungs look like trees, not because one copied the other, but because both were written by the same hand, nature's slow, patient imagination, shaped by need, refined by time. So the next time you walk beneath branches or rest beneath leaves, place your hand on your chest. Feel the rise, the fall. Know that you are not separate from what grows around you. You are a mirror of it. You're breathing with it. You are built in the same image. Your lungs are your forest within, and they remember, even when you forget. Now drift a little deeper and imagine the journey of a single breath as it travels from the outside world into the hidden forest within your chest. It begins in the air around you, invisible, weightless, ancient. It may have just passed through a leaf or a field or the mouth of a bird flying overhead. It carries with it history, not written in ink, but in molecules. It slips past your lips or nostrils, moves through your throat and enters the trachea, the trunk of the tree inside you. From there it divides and divides again. 2 bronchi, then dozens of smaller branches, then hundreds, then thousands, each one narrowing, bending, opening into ever smaller spaces. The breath is pulled downward by the movement of the diaphragm, a gentle muscle that flattens when it contracts, drawing the lungs open like petals unfurling. The air does not rush. It glides. It knows the way. By the time it reaches the alveoli, the breath has become something else. It is no longer simply air. It is potential. These tiny sacs, each only a fraction the width of a hair, are lined with capillaries that wrap them like lace. Blood flows past, dark and low in oxygen, hungry for what the breath can offer. And in a moment too small to see, oxygen crosses from air to blood. The breath has become part of you. This is not magic, but it feels like it. And it happens with every breath, every minute, every day, without instruction, without pause. The forest inside you drinks the sky, and in doing so lets you live. But the trees outside your body are doing something remarkably similar. Their leaves are wide, thin, covered in tiny pores called stomata. Through these pores, carbon dioxide enters, light and water meet it, and through the miracle of photosynthesis, sugar is made. Oxygen is released, and the air is refreshed again. The tree exhales. You inhale, you exhale. The tree inhales. The loop continues. And just as you cannot survive without your lungs, the planet cannot survive without its trees. They are the lungs of the earth, not metaphorically, but functionally. Forests filter air, regulate temperature, pull carbon from the sky and trap it in roots and wood. Rainforests especially breathe at scale. The Amazon alone produces a significant portion of the world's oxygen, even as it consumes some of it in return. We often forget this partnership. We walk through cities with barely a glance at the leaves above. We think of air as an endless resource. But it is not. It is a system, a balance, and it begins with breath, both yours and the trees. Your lungs and the forest share more than shape. They share purpose. Both are systems designed to take in what is needed and give back what is not. Both transform what they receive into something usable. Both maintain equilibrium in a body, in a biome, in a planet. Even stress touches both. When you are anxious, your breath becomes shallow. Your lungs receive less air. Your body responds. Tension rises. But just as breath can carry stress, it can also carry peace. A long, slow inhale, a quiet exhale. These are signals of safety, of calm. And the forest responds to calm too. Trees grow slowly. They whisper in breezes. They stand still. They model the kind of slowness our breath longs for. In this way, to breathe deeply is to imitate the trees. And when you do, when you stop, stand still, and draw in a full breath, your lungs fill not just with oxygen, but with silence, with space, with connection. The breath is no longer just a function. It becomes awareness. You become aware of your chest, your ribs, the movement of your shoulders. You become aware of the world pressing gently against your skin, the air waiting to become part of you. And in that moment, the shape of your lungs matters more than ever. Their branches guide you. Their movement carries you. Their structure, honed by evolution and time, offers you an internal path to stillness, to presence, to returning. It is no accident that when people meditate, they are told to focus on breath, or that when singers prepare their voices, they begin with breathing exercises, or that when a baby cries, a parent's first instinct is to breathe slowly, to soothe, to calm the rhythm of the moment. Breath holds rhythm, breath is rhythm, 'tis pulse and flow and pause, and the trees understand this. They too have rhythms, daily, seasonal, yearly. They breathe more in light than in dark, they shed in cold, they bloom in warmth. Their life pulses in quiet cycles, just as yours does. If you cut a tree and study its rings, you see years written in wood. Thick bands for rich seasons, thin ones for lean years. Your lungs, though they do not leave rings, carry their own record. A smoker's lung, a child's lung, a breathless gasp, a deep sigh, all a part of the forest's changing form. Time writes itself in tissue. And yet lungs can heal, slowly, quietly, with rest, with care, with breath. Just as a tree sends sap to its wounds, your lungs send cells to rebuild, to clear, to restore. The body wants to keep breathing, the forest wants to keep growing, life in both insists. So breathe again, this time slowly. Let your ribs expand like roots in all directions. Let your breath settle where the branches end, where the leaves of your lungs meet the blood. Know that in this breath lives a pattern older than words, one shared by trees, by rivers, by clouds. The shape of breath is the shape of life, reaching, dividing, connecting, and in that shape you are never alone. Breathe with me now, one last time in this story, not to begin, but to reflect. Let the breath travel gently from nose to chest, not as air alone, but as memory. Because in truth, every breath holds more than oxygen. It holds patterns, echoes, lineage. It carries the shape of the forest, not only in the way lungs branch and divide, but in the way breath itself weaves you into the living world. The structure of your lungs is a reminder. Life doesn't thrive in straight lines. It thrives in branching, in reaching out, in connecting. You can feel it when you're near trees. The air changes, not just in smell or temperature, but in texture. It feels fuller somehow, more generous. That is no illusion. Trees release oxygen, yes, but they also release aerosols, tiny organic compounds that influence not only the air but even your mood. Some studies show that time spent under trees lowers cortisol, the stress hormone. Your breath slows, your heartbeat steadies, your lungs open. This is not just calm, it's kinship. Because what trees give, your lungs receive. What your lungs give, trees receive. It is a conversation that has never needed words. Just breath, just rhythm. And as long as this exchange continues, life does too. The more trees we plant, the more lungs can breathe. The more lungs that breathe gently, the more we remember the trees. But it goes deeper than this. Trees and lungs are not only similar in shape, they are similar in purpose. Both filter, both protect, both respond to what they encounter. A forest facing fire or disease changes its growth. A lung facing smoke or infection changes its defenses. Both are resilient. Both are vulnerable. Both are always listening to what surrounds them. This listening is not with ears, but with presence. A tree bends toward the sun, sensing where the light moves. Your lungs adjust to altitude, sensing how much oxygen the air contains. A tree drinks water slowly, holds it through drought. Your lungs absorb moisture from the breath, humidifying, softening. Nothing is rushed. Everything is tuned. In the quiet of a forest, you may feel your own breath echo back to you. In the stillness of breath, you may feel the forest within you stir. These are not coincidences, they are signs of belonging. Your body remembers trees because your lungs are their mirror. You do not simply walk through a forest, you resonate with it. And yet many have lost this awareness. We breathe fast. We fill the air with engines and machines. We cut trees to make space, forgetting what they hold. But the body remembers. When you step into a place where trees grow wild, your lungs remember how to breathe deeper. When you place your hand on your chest and feel your breath slow, your body remembers that it came from silence. So what do we do with this remembering? We honor it, not just in thought but in action. We plant trees, we breathe consciously, we protect forests not because they are beautiful but because they are lungs. We treat our own lungs not as machines, but as gardens, delicate, growing in need of care. And care begins with attention, with a single breath taken not for function, but for awareness. Feel the air enter. Feel your ribs move, your lungs expand. Feel the branches inside you stretch just a little farther. This is not just biology. This is design. This is poetry written in flesh. The breath will not ask for your gratitude, but it receives it nonetheless. Every time you pause, every time you slow down, every time you breathe as if it matters, it does. You are tending your internal forest. You are giving space for healing, for balance, for presence. And when you exhale, do so softly. Let the breath carry more than carbon. Let it carry kindness, stillness, the memory of trees. Let it rise and join the world again, to be caught by a leaf or drift over water or pass into someone else's lungs. Air is not ours alone. It is the oldest form of sharing. In this way, your lungs connect you not just to trees, but to time. The shape of your breath is the shape of everything that grows, reaches, connects. From the tiniest capillary to the grandest oak, the pattern repeats. It is how life sustains itself, through branches, through breath, through giving. So the next time you feel overwhelmed, remember the forest, the one outside you, the one inside you. Know that your lungs, like trees, are rooted in something deeper, something older than words, something shaped by silence and time. And if you ever wonder where you belong, place your hand on your chest and feel it rise. That is your answer. You belong where the breath is, where the trees breathe back, where air becomes life and life returns it. You are the breath of the forest, carried in human form. You are the forest, breathing with a human heart. Long before lungs, long before leaves, long before even the oceans settled into blue stillness, there was wind. It whispered across the surface of a newborn earth, curling between volcanoes and rock, stirring dust that hadn't yet known the touch of water. This wind was not like the air we breathe now. It was thick with gases that stung and suffocated, hydrogen, methane, ammonia, and clouds of carbon dioxide. But it moved, and in its movement it carved the world. Before air became something to inhale, it was something to survive. Billions of years ago, the Earth's atmosphere was built not by life, but by the Earth itself, the slow exhale of a planet forming. Volcanoes released their breath into the sky. Comets delivered frozen gases. The planet's crust cracked and shifted, giving off the vapour of new stone. There was no oxygen yet, no breath. But the winds moved just the same, wild, hot, restless. They raced over barren plains and boiling seas, unaware they were shaping the future of life. Then something changed. In the shallows of the first seas, all blue-green cells began to appear, cyanobacteria. They were simple, without lungs, without nerves, barely alive by our standards. But they carried something powerful, the ability to use sunlight. They gathered light, split water, and in doing so created something utterly new, oxygen. For millions of years it leaked slowly into the air, a silent offering. At first it went unnoticed. Oxygen was a trace, a ghost in a world ruled by other gases. But it was reactive. It touched everything. It turned iron in the oceans to rust, forming bands of red that still lie buried in stone. It transformed the chemistry of air and water. Slowly the oxygen levels rose, and with it, something else began to emerge. Breath. Oxygen alone does not make air alive, but it makes life possible. It allows cells to burn fuel more efficiently. It allows larger, more complex organisms to survive. And with enough of it, something happened that had never happened before. The atmosphere became a medium for life. Creatures began to evolve that could use this new air not just to survive, but to grow. And so the wind changed. It was no longer only a force of erosion or weather. It became part of biology. It became something that could be drawn in, transformed and returned. The air was no longer just around life. It was within it. Imagine a world before that. Before leaves reached up to breathe. Before insects filled the sky. It was a quieter world, but not a still one. Wind still moved across the earth, carrying the whispers of a planet waking up. Those winds did not know they were carrying the seeds of oxygen, but they were. Every ripple of breeze helped move gases, helped shape weather, helped stir the oceans that fed the first living cells. Eventually, as the oxygen continued to build, new organisms emerged. Some learned to survive in this changing air, others perished. It was not an easy transition. Oxygen was both a gift and a threat, powerful, unstable, demanding. But those who adapted gained something remarkable. They could grow larger, they could move, they could begin to build bodies that depended on the flow of air. And with that came the beginnings of lungs, of gills, of breath. Life did not just live in air, it began to shape itself around it. The first true lungs were small, moist pouches that could hold oxygen long enough to keep a creature alive outside water. Over time, they became more complex, branching, thinning, connecting to blood. The air was no longer something to endure, it was something to seek. The Earth's atmosphere by then had changed entirely. The poisonous gases of the early planet had faded. Nitrogen took the lead. Oxygen became the second most abundant gas. Together, they formed the air we now breathe, clean, light, life-giving. And the wind, still moving, still restless, carried this new air everywhere. Wind is not a living thing. It does not think, it does not feel, but it has always been part of the living process. It carries seeds across deserts. It spreads pollen through forests. It moves moisture across continents. And above all, it keeps the atmosphere moving, mixing, cycling, refreshing. When you feel the breeze on your skin, you are feeling the memory of these ancient winds. They have never stopped moving. They are part of the same breath that passed through primitive oceans, that curled around dinosaurs, that stirred the sails of explorers. The wind is history in motion, and within it is the same air you breathe now. This air is not made of one moment, it is made of all moments. The oxygen you take in may have passed through the lungs of a whale last week, through the leaves of a rainforest yesterday, through a candle flame an hour ago. The carbon you exhale may find its way to a tree, a blade of grass, a single grain of moss. This is how air became alive, not by its own will, but by joining with life in a dance of endless exchange. And even today, air remains our oldest connection. It touches everyone. It moves through the richest cities and the quietest forests. It knows no boundary, carries no flag. The air in your lungs was once part of something else. It always will be. Breath is borrowed, always borrowed. And when you return it, you are adding to the story. So breathe now, gently. And as you do, remember, you are drawing in the breath of time, of stars, of oceans. You are not just alive in air. The air itself has become part of what it means to be alive. Let us follow the air further now, not as a storm or a gust, but as something softer. Drift into the quiet corners of the atmosphere where breath meets biology, and movement becomes memory. The air that surrounds you, though invisible, is full of gases, yes, nitrogen, oxygen, argon, carbon dioxide, but also full of presence, of stories, of connections so small they can't be seen, but so real they shape every second of your life. Air does not stop at your skin. It passes through you, enters you, becomes you. Every breath is a meeting between the world and the body, between the outside and the inside. The molecules that drift through your nose are not strangers. They are old companions, returning again and again, re-entering the rhythm of your lungs, your blood, your cells. But what is air, really? At its most basic, it is the blend of gases. Mostly nitrogen, over 3/4, and about 21% oxygen. The rest is a mix of argon, carbon dioxide, and traces of other elements. But in that blend, a miracle unfolds. Nitrogen supports the structure of proteins. Oxygen fuels energy in cells. Carbon dioxide, though we exhale it, plays a role in balance. Even the rare gases help keep things stable. Air, in its quiet chemistry, is perfectly tuned to support breath. And yet, it wasn't always this way. It took billions of years for the air to reach this balance. A long, slow process of life-shaping atmosphere, and atmosphere shaping life. The earliest organisms created oxygen. The oxygen transformed the skies. The skies allowed larger life. Larger life created new pressures, and the air responded. It thickened, thinned, adapted. It cooled the earth. It trapped heat. It wove itself into the climate, into the seasons, into breath itself. In this way, the air is alive not because it breathes, but because it allows breath. It holds the potential for life in every gust, every stillness, every cloud. Even the act of speaking is an interaction with air. Your lungs push it upward. Your voice folds it into sound. Your breath becomes words. Your thoughts ride the wind of your own body. And wind, that movement of air, has been one of life's oldest carriers. It moves seeds from one place to another. It brings rain clouds over fields. It cools the skin, carries scent, sculpts sand, turns leaves. It even helps shape the migrations of animals. Birds ride wind patterns. Insects travel with it. The tiniest spores, lighter than dust, catch a breeze and land miles away, beginning new life. The wind does not know what it carries, but it carries everything. You are part of this motion. Even standing still, you're in a river of air. It moves over you, around you, into you. The air in a single breath may have circled the earth more than once. It may have passed through deserts, forests, oceans, and now it enters your chest, not to stay, but to join a process, respiration, that links you to every living thing. Within your lungs, this air is filtered, warmed, and humidified. Then in the alveoli, oxygen passes into blood. The air no longer belongs to the sky. It belongs to your body. It becomes part of who you are, not symbolically, but molecularly. These atoms enter your cells, your tissues, your brain. They are used to build, to think, to feel. Then, when the work is done, they are returned, not as they came, but changed. This exchange is not just physical, it is elemental. You take in what the world offers, you give back what it needs. Trees breathe in your exhale. Algae in the oceans draw carbon from the air. You are part of the cycle, whether you notice or not. And this cycle is not fragile, but it is responsive. When forests burn, carbon floods the sky. When oceans warm, gases shift. When cities grow, the balance tilts. But the air remains, always moving, always adjusting, always waiting to be remembered. Some cultures have never forgotten. In many traditions, breath and spirit are one. In Hebrew, the word ruach means both wind and spirit. In Greek, pneuma means both breath and soul. In Sanskrit, prana is the life force carried by breath. These words were not made by accident. They were born of observation. People noticed the connection between air and aliveness, between breath and presence. And science, centuries later, confirms the wisdom. Without breath, there is no awareness, no consciousness. When breath pauses, so does thought. The brain needs oxygen more than any other substance. Even a few minutes without it, and the body begins to fail. Air is not a luxury. It is the foundation of experience. Yet we treat it like background. We forget it is there until it is gone. In high mountains where oxygen thins, breath becomes work. In polluted air, breath becomes struggle. In illness, breath becomes precious. And in stillness, breath becomes sacred. This is why noticing your breath is not just a practice. It is a return to what matters, to what supports, to what connects. When you sit quietly and listen to the air moving in and out, you are listening to life itself. You are feeling the movement of something that began before you were born and will continue long after you are gone. The air you breathe today is ancient. It has passed through empires, through forests, through lungs now long turned to dust. It has carried birds across oceans, lifted seeds into sky, turned windmills in empty fields. It is not new, but it is renewed, and each time you breathe it in, so breathe now, not with effort, with trust, with the quiet knowledge that you are part of something vast, something invisible, something eternal. The air is not separate from you. It is you, in motion. and in that motion you are home. Now follow the wind one last time, not as a storm that rushes, but as a whisper that lingers. Let it guide you back through everything it has touched. Volcanoes that once shaped the sky, cells that lit the oceans with new breath, forests that exhale life into the world. And in the middle of all of this, in the space between earth and sky, is you, breathing, participating, alive because air learned how to carry life. The air you hold in your lungs is not waiting to be understood. It does not ask to be noticed, but it gives, endlessly. It brings oxygen to your brain so you can wonder, so you can feel, so you can dream. It carries the sound of a loved one's voice. It lifts the scent of rain before it falls. It surrounds you in moments of silence and speech, motion and stillness. It is always there, always with you, always moving through you, even when you forget. But to forget the air is to forget the source. Life is not possible without it. Not just because we need to breathe, but because air connects everything. It is the great carrier. It moves warmth from equator to pole. It distributes moisture from sea to land. It scatters seeds, spreads fire, cools skin. It shapes clouds. It sings through branches. It dances with pollen, dust, mist. It carries stories written not in ink, but in molecules. The quiet remains of breath, of fire, of forests far away. And you are part of that story. You exhale carbon with every breath. It rises, floats, disperses. Some of it is caught by a nearby tree. Some of it rides the wind to another continent. Some of it will be held in the bark of a growing trunk or drawn into the sea by plankton, or one day pressed into stone. You're not just breathing in the world, you're breathing out into it, writing yourself into the planet's rhythm. In this way, even silence is not empty. It is filled with breath, with wind moving softly through space, with air shaped by living things. And in your stillness, you are not alone. You are part of that breath, listening to the same currents that rustle forests and ripple grass. You do not need to move to feel this. The wind moves through you. Sometimes you may notice it, in a sudden breeze across your face, in the lift of a curtain, in the stillness before a storm. That is not the air beginning, it is always there. But it is a moment where you return to it, where you remember this is what connects you to everything else. Even the stars breathe in a way. Not with lungs, but with cycles, burning hydrogen into helium, releasing light, radiating particles across space. These particles become part of interstellar clouds, then planets, then atmospheres. Air is one of their gifts. On Earth, it became the breath of life. And life, in turn, has shaped air. Animals, plants, fungi, all have added to the sky, changed its chemistry, influenced its flow. Over billions of years, the atmosphere has shifted from a toxic shroud to a life-giving veil. And that veil, so thin, so fragile, is what holds us all. If you could float far above Earth, you would see this. The atmosphere is only a whisper over the surface, a shimmer of blue hugging the planet. And within it, all breath, all weather, all sound. Everything you have ever said or heard or sung has taken place within this fragile space. It is home, but home must be cared for. The air, though vast, can be harmed. Pollution does not vanish. Carbon does not disappear. When forests fall, when fires rise, when chemicals fill the sky, the balance shifts, the rhythm of air begins to stagger, and the breath becomes burdened. Still, the wind does not give up. The earth does not stop offering air, it waits, it adapts, and we can too. With each breath we can choose awareness. With each action we can protect the rhythm. Every tree planted is a promise. Every breath taken with care is a kind of prayer, not spoken but felt. And you don't need to change the world in a single inhale. Just remember. Remember that breath is not automatic, it is inherited. That air is not empty, it is soured. That wind is not random, it is legacy in motion. So breathe now, not as something you do, but as something you share. With the trees, the oceans, the sky. With the ancestors who once walked beneath the same clouds. With the children yet to come who will breathe what we leave behind. You are not separate from the air. You are its continuation. And when you lie down to rest, when the day grows quiet and your breath softens, the air will still be with you. Surrounding, holding, waiting to be drawn in again. This is how air became alive, not because it lives, but because it allows living. It is not just what keeps us going. It is what connects us to everything that goes on. There is a sound so soft, so constant that you almost never hear it. The sound of your own breath. It is quieter than footsteps, gentler than speech. It rises and falls beneath every thought, every heartbeat, every moment of silence. But if you pause, if you listen closely, you'll find that this quiet sound is not just a function, it is music, a symphony composed by your body, played in rhythm with the universe. Your inhale begins in stillness. Air waiting outside you drifts toward your open lungs. The diaphragm lowers, the chest expands, pressure shifts, molecules move. No conductor cues this action, no conscious thought demands it, and yet it happens with grace, the same way a tide lifts without effort, the same way a bird glides with a thermal. You're moving with nature, not against it. Then comes the exchange. In the alveoli of your lungs, air meets blood. Oxygen finds its way into red cells, binds to hemoglobin, and begins its journey through your body. This part of the breath is not noisy or visible, but it is vital. It is a delivery of energy, a seedant gift given hundreds of times each hour. And when your body has taken what it needs, it returns the rest. Carbon dioxide, warmth, moisture, carried back through the bloodstream, released into the world again on the exhale. This rhythm, in and out, is the first music your body ever learned. Before you knew language, you knew breath. Before you could speak, you could sound. Before you ever opened your eyes, your lungs began to move. This was the first note of your personal symphony, and it has never stopped playing. But the music of breath is not only yours. It is shared. In every forest, in every ocean, in every living being, breath happens. Trees inhale carbon dioxide and exhale oxygen. Whales breach and gasp at the surface. Birds chirp with lungs full of air shaped by miles of sky. Even the soil, filled with tiny microbes, breathes in its own slow way. These rhythms overlap, layer upon layer, like the voices in a choir. And this choir sings in harmony. When you exhale, the world inhales. When a tree releases oxygen, you take it in. When a patch of grass in a distant meadow photosynthesizes, it joins the beat. The earth is not quiet. It is breathing, always breathing, a symphony without instruments, but with infinite players. Science reveals this harmony in its own terms, speaks of feedback loops, of respiratory exchange ratios, of cellular respiration and gas diffusion, but beneath the numbers, beneath the data, is the same truth. Life is coordinated, it moves together, it flows as one, and breath is its unifying rhythm. Even time listens to the breath. In some cultures, life is not measured in years or months, but in breaths. The Buddha is said to have described the average human lifespan not as decades, but as a fixed number of inhales and exhales. In that view, each breath becomes precious, not just a function, but a moment. A gift to be noticed, honoured, slowed. And when you do slow it, when you breathe deliberately, when you stretch the inhale and lengthen the exhale, something shifts. Your heart rate falls, your mind clears, your nervous system, which runs on constant alert, begins to soften. This is not magic. It is biology. It is the breath speaking to the brain and the brain listening. It is the beginning of calm. That is why breathing is at the heart of so many ancient practices. In yoga, breath is prana, life energy. In meditation, breath is the anchor. In music, it is the foundation of sound. In grief, it is the rhythm that remains when words are lost. In birth, it marks the arrival of life. In death, it signals release. In every language, in every land, breath has carried more than air. It has carried meaning. And the lungs, the instrument of this symphony, are tuned for nuance. They respond to the tiniest changes, a scent on the wind, a shift in altitude, the touch of cold. They don't just take in air, they interpret it. They translate the world into chemistry, then into feeling. That's why the smell of rain can bring peace. That's why the scent of a loved one can open memory. Your lungs are listening to the world and your breath plays back what it hears. And then there is silence, the space between the inhale and the exhale. It is brief but sacred. It is the still point, the pause in the music, the place where everything rests, just for a heartbeat, before the rhythm resumes. In that moment, you are neither giving nor receiving, you are simply being. And the universe, too, has its own breath. Stars are born, shine, collapse, Galaxies expand, stretch, cool. Planets spin, cycle, wait. The cosmic background hum, the vibration of particles, the drift of light. All of it is movement. All of it is breath, stretched across space and time. When you inhale, you mirror this. You draw in atoms shaped by stars, air touched by trees, molecules older than mountains. When you exhale, you send something back. Your breath is not small. It is part of the oldest pattern there is, the pattern of exchange, of return, of rhythm. So listen now, not with your ears, but with your breath. Feel its rise, its fall, the softness of its pace, the quiet strength it carries. This is the music of living. This is your song. Now let the music deepen. Let the breath unfold into the quiet places it usually passes unnoticed. Beneath your ribs, behind your collarbone, between the spaces of your thoughts, this is where the breath moves when no one is watching. It does not need applause. It does not need direction. It continues, always weaving the present moment into your body, one inhale at a time. Inside you, breath is not just a rhythm, it's a network. The air you inhale spreads across the lungs in fractal branches, splitting into bronchi, into bronchioles, and then into the alveoli, the soft, glistening sacs at the end of every path. These are the halls of the inner symphony, where the music of breath becomes action. Here, oxygen slips into blood, molecule by molecule, while carbon dioxide moves the other way. It is a quiet choreography, ancient and effortless, carried out with more precision than any human-built machine. From the lungs, the oxygen travels. It is swept into the bloodstream by the beat of the heart, carried in red cells shaped like tiny discs. These cells glide through vessels like notes through a flute, reaching every tissue, every organ. They deliver oxygen to muscles that move you, to neurons that think you, to skin that holds you. This is not metaphor. It is life. It is the silent generosity of air made real in your body. And still, the music does not stop there, because the breath is not only inside you, it is also outside you, echoing in the lives around you. A bird takes off nearby, wings stretching on a breath of lift. A tree bends slightly in the wind, leaves trembling like cymbals in a breeze. Somewhere far from you, a child inhales before a first word. Someone else exhales after tears. These moments are not isolated. They are part of the same song. The atmosphere, like a concert hall, carries it all. Sound, scent, temperature. The breath holds them, delivers them, translates them. A breeze becomes a whisper. Warm air feels like comfort. The chill in winter carries its own stillness. Your breath moves through these experiences, not as a stranger, but as a listener, as a participant, as one instrument in a much larger composition. Even your emotional states are reflected in breath. When you are nervous, your breathing becomes quick, shallow. When you feel peace, it slows, deepens. The breath is a mirror to your mood, a string that can be gently tuned. And when you begin to guide it, not with force, but with attention, something changes. A longer exhale slows the heart. A focused inhale clears the fog from the mind. The body listens, the breath leads. This is why in so many traditions, breath is a doorway. A way to stillness, a way to clarity. In meditation, the breath is the anchor. Always present, always returning. In prayer, it is the pause between words. In music, it is the silence that gives shape to sound. In love, it is the sigh that carries tenderness. In fear, it is the gasp before protection. In awe, it is the breath that catches and holds just for a moment before being released. And like any great symphony, breath is not just melody. It is harmony. Your lungs work with your heart, your nervous system, your posture, your voice. They adapt. When you lie down, the breath shifts. When you move, it adjusts. When you sing, it shapes. When you cry, it pulses. Every part of you responds to breath, and breath responds in return. Even silence is not empty. In the stillness between breaths is a kind of truth, a reminder that you don't need to speak or move or try, that simply being, simply breathing is enough, that each breath is a complete moment, self-contained, full, that life is not built from achievements alone but from presence, from the music of your own aliveness played softly beneath all the noise. And this aliveness is not only personal, it is planetary. Every living being breathes in some way. Plants, animals, fungi, even bacteria. The earth itself breathes. Ice caps exhale moisture. Volcanoes inhale pressure and release it. Oceans breathe carbon in and out with the changing of the tides. You are not separate from these rhythms. You are a rhythm within them. In some ways, your breath is the most honest thing about you. You can pretend with words, you can hide with gestures, but the breath tells the truth. It shows when you are calm, when you are tense, when you are present, when you are lost. And it does not judge. It simply continues, waiting for you to notice. And when you do, when you finally notice, you may feel something unexpected. Not just peace, but connection. Not just calm, but wonder, because suddenly the world feels closer. The trees are not just scenery, they are partners in your breath. The sky is not just overhead, it is where your exhale drifts. The air is not just substance, it is sacred. It is the thread that ties you to everything else. That is the true symphony. Not the music of lungs alone, but the music of participation. The way breath lets you receive and give. The way it joins your life to the lives around you. The way it reminds you that every inhale is a beginning and every exhale is a return. So breathe now, and not to fill the lungs, but to feel the world. Inhale the silence. Exhale your presence into it. Let the rhythm guide you back, not to thought, but to being. Not to effort, but to ease. You are the note, the pause, the crescendo, the quiet rest between. You are not listening to the symphony. You are part of its sound. Let the breath bring you now to its softest place, the final part of the song, where everything slows and the rhythm settles. You are still breathing, but not as before. Now it is not for energy or movement or sound, it is for understanding, for remembering that to breathe is not just to live, but to belong, to exist in harmony with a world that is always breathing with you. We think of breath as ours, something that starts and ends with the self, but it never truly begins or ends. What you inhale was already moving. What you exhale will keep moving. Air is borrowed. It does not stay. It touches you for a moment, gives you what you need, then leaves to become part of someone else's story. That someone might be nearby, a person, a tree, a bird, or they may be far away across oceans through time. The breath you release today may one day rest in the lungs of a future child, in the branches of a distant forest, in the sky above another land. That is how far breath reaches. That is how wide the symphony plays. And even as you sit in stillness, that vast movement continues. The air cycles through global winds, through weather systems, through the gentle mixing of atmosphere that never truly rests. It is a slow music, patient and enduring. The breeze outside your window, the cloud above your roof, the air that moves your curtain, all of it is breath in motion. It is the same rhythm you carry inside. You are never outside the song, even when you are silent, even when your thoughts are noisy or your heart is tired. The breath is still there, a gentle metronome, reminding you that life is unfolding second by second, inhale by exhale. No performance required, just presence. And when you do become aware, when you finally stop and feel your own breath, something ancient awakens. You remember that breath has always been there, long before you, long before your voice, long before your mind had words. In the womb, your lungs prepared in darkness. At birth, they opened with a cry, and every moment since they have carried you. In joy and fear, in sleep and speech, they have stayed. It is easy to take this for granted. Most of us do. But there are times, illness, grief, aging, awe, when the breath becomes visible again. We notice its fragility, its depth, its power. And in those moments, we come close to something essential. The core of what it means to be alive. To breathe is to trust. You do not know where the air comes from or where it will go, but you let it in, you let it fill you, you let it leave. You participate in a cycle older than species, older than language, older than thought. And in doing so, you participate in the shaping of the world. Every breath changes the atmosphere just a little. Every exhale releases carbon, warmth, presence. Every inhale takes in oxygen, memory, life. You are a living exchange, not just with the air, but with time. You share breath with those who came before, the ancestors who sang, who wept, who lived quietly and bravely under skies just like yours. You share it with those who will come after, children you may never meet, voices you will never hear, lives you help make possible just by breathing gently, kindly, attentively today. And you share it with those beside you, the people you pass on the street, the ones you sit beside in silence, the ones you love. When you speak to them, your breath becomes language. When you comfort them, your breath becomes safety. When you lose them, your breath carries the weight of what is no longer said. So you see, breath is not just biological, it is relational. It is the invisible thread that ties you to everyone else. And it is also your anchor, your way back to now. When your mind drifts, when your heart rushes, when your day is loud, you can return, not with effort, with breath. One inhale, one exhale, and you are home again, not in a place but in a rhythm, in the quiet certainty that you are alive and that life is moving through you. This is the symphony. This is the song that has no beginning and no end. You join it when you are born, you leave it when you die, but even then your breath continues in the molecules you've released, in the air you've shared, in the peace you've practiced. Nothing is lost, only passed on. So let this final breath be one of gratitude, not because you must, but because you can, because the air is still here, waiting, because your lungs are still open, receiving, because the world is still singing softly, gently through you. Breathe in, breathe out. You are part of the music now, and the music will go on.